Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 4 of the Free Agents podcast. We are just flying along with these episodes. Time is going by at a crazy rate. Sadly, Andrew will not be joining us today. He's on IL after his procedure, but he's doing good. He's just high on painkillers, as one is after a procedure. So sending good vibes. I hope that you're listening to this, Andrew, and he'll be back on Sunday for the next episode. However, today we are joined by a privileged guest. Incredibly lucky to have him here. He is a busy man, a fellow NYU graduate who just recently moved to Malaga, Spain, which is a beautiful part of Spain. And he founded his own soccer nonprofit, Passion FC, a couple years ago, and he's killing it. Please welcome Arik Rosenstein to the Free Agents podcast. We're very excited to have him. We have Brandon clapping, if you cannot see that on the audio version. And Arik, we're very happy to have you.
Thank you for having me, guys. I mean, it's a pleasure to be here. Such great guys. And, a little offended. I was number 4 on the list, but, I'll forgive you guys, of course.
Well, hey, in your defense, there was only one other guest, so you're technically number 2.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, I'll take that. Yeah,
I would say, no offense to Liz, but maybe Arik was our first choice. But I think we have to say that to every single person we have on.
Yeah, we have to, but
looks like Liz isn't coming back on the pod ever.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, definitely not now. But Liz, if you're listening, it's all in good fun. It's just witty banter, as the Brits say. But we're sending good vibes to Andrew and Arik to start. I know that you did like almost every year of NYU abroad. And I know that because we would take the same classes and then you'd be like, oh, by the way, I'm leaving for another 2 years. And I'd be like, well, that's a shame. So briefly, if you could run down your favorite NYU abroad location and why, we would be happy to critique those in our own way.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you fellow abroadie over there in Brandon, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't go with Brandon, but we went to some different places. But I from the beginning, firstly, I took a gap year before starting university, which I highly recommend to everyone, so you can get your shit in order. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but
you're good.
You get your mind in order and all that. But yeah, I mean, from the very first meeting, I was about scheduling my classes in a way that I could go abroad as possible. I was supposed to go abroad 3 times, but we all know how our last year and a half of college.
Yeah.
Other one I was supposed to. So the first time I went was sophomore fall, second year in the first semester. Went to Accra. I went to Ghana, which is this NYU site that nobody knows where it is. Nobody knows. It's just like the first one that you skip past usually. I was one of 8 with 7 other girls. Which was an amazing experience. I worked for a team out there, had a cool internship, which was a ton of responsibility for one of the biggest teams in Accra. And then I coached out there as well for a local public schools team. And then, I mean, we can get into that as well. But then after that, I went to Argentina for supposed to be 4 months, and then March 2020. RIP to my semester abroad, but that was a great time. Also, I did a homestay, spoke a ton of Spanish, and went to so much football or soccer.
It's football. It's football on this podcast, brother.
On this podcast, great. Well, that's the only reason I'm here still. No, I'm kidding. But so overall, I think they're super different. I think it's about what you wanted out of it. I think, they're both super like big eye openers, and I was really blessed to be able to work and travel to both those sides of the world during my studies.
Just as a quick follow-up, as someone who didn't go abroad, obviously I lived abroad in high school, so I felt, okay, I did study abroad for 5 years. Let's just study domestic for a little bit. But what would you say was like the biggest challenge taking school in another country? Obviously, like the language is the easy answer, or, I didn't know where things were until I was there for X amount of time. But in terms of just taking school, what was the biggest challenge that you faced?
Well, yeah, it's remembering you're in school. I think like it is so fun, and I think this NYU's dirty secret abroad classes are super easy. Um, you still have to do some stuff. You still wind up with a paper or something, and like if you actually pay attention to the classes you take, you can actually learn a lot and develop yourself intellectually, which I think is something essential. So yeah, it was for me. It was like just remembering that hey, I was actually abroad to do school and not just go to football matches in different parts of the world and do hikes in the middle of Ghana and stuff like that. But yeah, that's what I'd say.
Brandon, do you second that?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I'm just thinking like there was the architecture class we talked about before with Andrew on this podcast. But I mean, one of the other classes that Andrew and I were actually both in was a music in Prague class. So
Nice.
our different classes, we would just like one class we met at a jazz club and our professor was actually performing there. We just all got to hang out, watch his performance. We did have to write like a 1-page paper about it afterwards, reflecting. But we also got to go to like the opera in Prague, which was an incredible experience. And like sometimes you forget like, wait, this is our classroom like setting, but it was still so much fun.
So you mentioned March 2020. That was I'd say a jumping off point for a lot of other events. How
What
would
happened?
you? Yeah,
Can you
something
recap
called
this?
yeah. If anyone missed what's happened the past year and a little bit, it's actually a pandemic, still kind of going on. But what would you? We're on Zoom. No one knew what Zoom was until then. How would you kind of explain how Zoom is like affecting? Because you run a business, you run a nonprofit that we can talk about a little bit more later. But how has that kind of affected? Obviously, first, like the school aspect. I'm sure that you weren't a huge fan of Zoom, just knowing you.
Yeah.
But how did that affect like your day to day in terms of running your business, and how has that either made your business succeed more or what?
Yeah, I think it was honestly like the way I phrased it and thought of it was it was a universal snow day. Like the entire world was home and craving social interaction, which is super. I mean, hopefully it'll never happen in our lifetimes again, but whatever, if it does or whatever happens. But I think that there's two perspectives. Like after the first 3 weeks where you're just like, oh, this is great, TV all the time, junk food, like don't need to watch my weight or anything, all that. Like then you kind of realize you miss talking to people and building on that. But there was a lot of efficiency that came out of it. I think as a result, the world's probably forgotten how to socialize in a lot of contexts. I just like now meeting people, and I just don't even know how to talk to them anymore. It's like, oh, we have a half-hour Zoom call. Okay, whatever, it's done. But no, it's in person. You have to those intricacies. But yeah, I think it does open it up. Like like we were most productive during it because we're at home and you had nothing to do. Like I refused to just sit there and just say like, let's do nothing. And at the time there were people involved in Passion FC, and I was taking a class about about how to make a business plan, and then like the idea that came to actually do it, and we actually founded and planned and did a lot of stuff during this, and we had an amazing team, a lot of transitions, people have left, joined, that sort of stuff, but it was just efficient, and now we have people all across the world involved, which is cool, and a different approach, I would say.
Hey, I envy your productivity. I can say that 3-week junk food phase, I don't know if that's even in it for me. So I very much envy the productivity. But just now we can talk a little bit more about Passion FC, because I know that that's something that you're, obviously your main focus. And it's something that I've kind of seen from like inception to now, because I remember in the classes that we had taken, you had just started it. It was like just an Instagram account. Needed a logo, and I said I would make it, and then I never did, and then you got someone else to do it, so they did a good job. I don't know if I could have done any better, but it's been really cool to watch that grow. And I mean, in my words, Passion FC is kind of just like a charitable initiative to spread the game of football through the lens of like how it's changed people's lives, how it's, you know, benefiting society. But in your own words, how would you describe Passion FC, and has that kind of changed as you've, you know, been working on it for longer?
Yeah, I think you mean it's really true. Like you've seen since the beginning, and it really started in like the early classes where I just would like just shit on the NFL the whole time or something along those lines. And you know, it was always I was always kind of the sort of devil's advocate in a lot of our class discussions because of how capitalistic and in a way it was, which is for better or for worse. I think it's just I've been exposed to a different sporting model. And I think for me, though, what I got out of that was social interaction and discussions about it. Not just, it's not like changing others' beliefs, but also changing my own. So for Passion FC, the idea initially was I was in Ghana and I just wanted to start a place to like share some of the stories that I encountered through my players, through the team that I worked at. And you know, it started Instagram account, only 10 or 12 people posted in my 4 or 5 months in Ghana. And then I got back in my first marketing class. I think you were in that.
Yes, sir.
Lucy, who was also in our program, she came up to me. She's like, I want in. I was like, what are you talking about? In on what? And she's like, yeah, I want in on Passion FC. I was like, you've seen that? It's like we have like 150 followers. What you talk? I don't know what you're talking about. And then that was when the idea came, like, let's actually develop this more. And as you have conversations with people, as you get challenged on your own beliefs, it became what it is today, which what I view it as is it's a place where football is used, the game of football is used to facilitate difficult conversations about society, about culture, about the economics even. I mean, it really, we plan on expanding to a lot of different areas in terms of in-person events when we can have those properly, and building a curriculum. And just being a founder in school is, you just learn a ton. You just learn a ton about IRS filings, and you learn stuff you don't even think is important, such as communications plans. And then you feel like going into your next stuff because it's your own experience and you have no way to make any mistakes, that you could do anything. And I think the most motivation is from the team that we have, which is super unique, diverse. We're challenging each other's beliefs of what this should be. And if you ask anyone on the team, I won't say I struggled for a long time to say I founded it, because I think it's just a mentality, this idea that sport in general, but I think specifically football, can be used to have really hard conversations and then as a result lead to a better society. So yeah, we're certified 501c3 nonprofit. We got our certification in January. We're about to release a fundraising campaign, which is going to be weird, asking friends and family for money. But we're working on the education module. So for example, like we say, hey, soccer or football can be used to have difficult conversations. Well, what does that mean? How do you build that out into grants? How do you build that out into things that are tangible and meat on the bone, and not just fluffy and let's hold hands and kumbaya together? You know, it's more than that, but we need to build that educational module, which I don't have the expertise to, but we have to raise funds to hire the right people to do that. So that's kind of where we're at, and there's so much to it, and it's been a lot of fun and a lot of late nights and early mornings.
Hey, that's what trying to run a business is like. You know, you got to put your head down and push forward. But I think in terms of the education stuff, that's really interesting, because I think the NYU sports program like has done a good job in attempting to do what Passion FC is trying to do in terms of like using education to have difficult conversations. Obviously not like super well, just because it was mostly recently. Like there's the, you know, how basketball can save the world, which sounds a lot like what, you know, Passion FC aspires to do in terms of using a game of something to, you know, have conversations and unite people through sport. So if you haven't already, you know, had a Hollander experience about the class yet, then I highly recommend that. And if Hollander, if you're listening, please come on. It'll be a fun time. We can shoot the shit.
That'd be incredible.
But I'm really looking forward to seeing what the in-person stuff is like. I know you had just done I think one of your first in-person events like 2 or 3 months before
Yeah.
COVID in Brooklyn. And
we had
I'm
12
sad.
events planned for 2020. We were able to do one. Like one of them was going to be in Argentina, and I had everything booked, the room, everything. And the idea was to bring together supporters to discuss, like different supporters in Argentina. It's really hard to do. And I had an organization I was working with to discuss violence in Argentinian football, which is like, to get that kind of event to happen would have been amazing. But we'll do it one day. We'll do it one day. So the business plan change when you plan for 12 events that just don't happen. So.
For sure. I mean, my motto has always been man plans, God laughs. So God has been laughing at all of us for around a year now.
Over a year.
But hey, I'm really looking forward to
Free Agents podcast over here.
Yeah. Hey, I mean, Passion FC's got me going. What can I say? But on the topic of capitalism, you brought that up. You said that, you know, you've seen the other system of sport. As someone who's like pretty new compared to you, maybe in terms of following like European football and all that stuff, you know, the Super League, you know, was pretty jarring for everyone. I think that a lot of Americans fans were like, oh, this is great. You know, I saw a lot of reactions saying like, this is going to happen eventually. But as someone who lived in Europe and was like part of the open league system and all that stuff, it's just a travesty. So if you had any, you know, say in the matter, how would you try to prevent something like this from happening again? Or is there not a simple fix? Is it just going to happen and we're going to have to deal with it?
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, working in that, like currently I work for an organization called esteemed, and we Supporters Direct Europe, and we represent grassroots clubs and supporter groups. And we help them we help them get more representation at a governing level. And these clubs and groups are often fan owned. So the three of us give $100 a year, and we get to vote on our team, not like the Green Bay Packers, because that's a lot of bullshit. They get a plaque and they can say, hey, I'm a fan, but that's not true. Nashville SC actually used to be fan owned, but MLS doesn't allow that. So look, I think the Super League, when you're working in it, like when you saw the impact, it was sort of stuff you kind of knew was coming. It wasn't shocking. And the reality is it's a reaction to the economy of sport, right? It didn't just appear. This wasn't an idea that the U.S. owners and the oil company owners decided, hey, like, let's just do it, see what happens. Like, no, this has been planned for a long time. And, you know, the closed model, if it had gone through, it probably would have, just like, let's look at England. I think it's maybe almost 5 million people that go to or participate in football every weekend, right? That's just like going to games. That's not including playing recreationally. Like, I don't, you know, I think if that would have gone through, you're essentially killing every incentive of culture and community, which existed in these places for decades, for, you know, years. And all of a sudden you've got globally, right? Because it wouldn't have just stopped at Europe. It would have gone to the African countries, and they would have had their Champions League, and CAF would have fallen apart. It goes to Asia. It goes, I mean, it already is happening in the US, and I would argue it's not great, but there is some fight for promotion relegation. But overall, like, it would have essentially just displaced the entire concept of what sporting merit means. And I think, you know, I'm really happy that everyone was kind of united. And in terms of preventing it, I think we're seeing reforms going into place, because this was a real, like, what other sport does the government, the parliament in England start, you know, getting involved in changing the policy? And it's really nuanced and complex, because like Germany and Sweden have 50+1 ownership embedded in their laws of sporting structure. So I think I don't think it'll happen anytime soon again, because of the risk that's occurred. But, you know, it is something to think about. And I think just look at the counter to it. Like, how many games do you guys watch in in NBA or NFL or MLB that are just meaningless, that literally have no meaning until you wake up at the last weekend? Like, And you see that it's meaningless because when teams like the Colorado Rockies now, for example, are not going to have a great season, as the Mets just played themselves,
Yeah.
they're just like, oh, what do we do? And it's like rebuilding, and like it's like socialism for billionaires. It's such bullshit that it's like fair play and league think, but it's not. It's a matter of fact. It's a threshold. It's a limitation on your intellectual freedom to enjoy sport. Right? It limits your definition of what sport means. The fact that Matt doesn't have surrounding him 3 different teams that he could go to that have 4,000 here or 200 there, and they can't have the same ability to get to where the NBA. I think that is a limitation on what the concept of sport means. So kind of my rant on it, and I'm sure you guys weren't expecting anything different, but I think long-term it wouldn't have worked in Europe because the second Bayern Munich versus Barcelona becomes an annual event, it becomes worthless. Look at it, you could see it in European basketball that are trying to do it, and football's bigger, I would say, but it would have been short-term money.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was clear that it was just a cash grab, but like COVID had, I think, everything to do with that. But an interesting thing, because I wrote a paper on the Super League, and an interesting thing that I found was there's only 11 closed soccer leagues, closed football leagues in the entire world. 11.
Yeah.
Like that's insane to think about. That I'd say almost every, most baseball leagues, most basketball leagues are either closed or there's just not much of a system to have a promotion relegation. But there's soccer leagues, football leagues everywhere. Yeah. Everywhere. And there's only 11. And it's basically just Australia and North America and Asia. The rest of the world is all open. So I agree with the fact that it would just be kind of either saturating the market or just creating so many problems at the local and grassroots level that it's not even worth the money that you might get. And if anyone's watching the video podcast, you can see that Brandon's wearing a women's U.S. national team kit. And the funniest part, at least to me, was that this whole Super League idea basically excluded the women. They said, oh, we'll have plans to incorporate it later. But some of these women's teams are far more accomplished than the men's teams, or even not even that they're more accomplished, but they exist and they play in, the top flight of whatever division they're playing in, and they're in the Champions League. And they're like, well, sorry to you guys. If we get in the Super League and we get banned from our domestic competitions, then, have fun. Don't let the door hit you on your way out. So we will see how that develops.
Crazy. I mean, it's like you tell your fans essentially, hey, you literally mean nothing to us.
Yeah.
Like you literally mean a statistic, a metric.
Well, you just mean a source of income is what they said. That's all they care about.
What do they call it? The new fans. Oh God. Or something like the fan of the future. I don't even know what they called it, but anyway.
Super League, man. Not so super to me. But we have a big game coming up, Champions League final in I believe it is this weekend. If I'm getting my scheduling correct, it's on Saturday. They moved it from Turkey to Porto. It's going to be 2 English teams, which seems to be a theme recently because 2 years ago it was 2 English teams. Or was that last year?
It was actually last 4 with the Europa League as well.
Yeah, that's true. Because it was Arsenal, Chelsea, but all the past years felt like 10 years. So I can't even remember what year was which. But I guess we can talk a little Europa League final because it ended on 2 goalkeeper penalties, which, as someone who's not, again, like super up on penalty shootouts, but I feel like that's a very rare occurrence, especially because there was only one miss. It was 11-10 final, which is, I feel like goalkeepers would be able to save more than one penalty a shootout, but that's just like pure FIFA right there. Everyone's just cheesing the penalties. But GGMU, sad to see them lose. Just kidding.
Very sad.
Not sad at all.
No, it is sad. Devastated.
I saw that
it shouldn't have even gone to penalties, but that's another thing.
The last penalty David De Gea has saved for Manchester United was against Lukaku when he played for Everton. It's been that long. So
I think it's been about like 50 in a row that have gone in. And I saw some statistic where there's like for an average keeper, there's a 0.04% chance of having just 50 penalties scored on you in a row.
Impressive. World class, De Gea. Absolutely world class. But I think Villarreal, while we're talking Europa League, is like a really inspirational story for why open leagues and why the Super League like is just such a travesty, because like their population of 50,000 in Spain, like that's so tiny. And I think they had a youth player, Pau Torres, one of their center backs, came to the youth academy from Villarreal to win a major European trophy in that like small of an area. And to bring that club from, obviously every club starts at zero and then builds their way up. So to see that was really cool and is like a entirely unique to European football. So
yeah, and
good.
A Super League would have ended all possibility of that.
Exactly.
Sorry on that note, but I think it's an amazing story, and that Villarreal, it is part of a larger metro area in Valencia, but there are all these like Twitter, like the people who want promotion relegation in the US in like the small grassroots leagues are all like showing this comparison, like statistics of 50,000 versus, and like there's more nuances to it.
Oh, for sure.
It's a very nice statistic, and it's a flawed analogy, I'll admit, but I was happy to see that it wasn't overlooked. This idea that, hey, this is a really amazing story that was almost taken away, and in some places it is taken away.
Yeah. Well, hey, I mean, I think Villarreal would have at least been given an automatic bid to the Super League with a Europa League title. So they would be one of the 5 lucky teams, according to their model, to make it.
To receive an invite.
Yeah.
Remember what they said in the beginning and what would have actually happened would probably be very different.
Oh, 100%. And, and then you look at Spurs, who, did they even make Europa League on the final day? I think they did, but just hilarious. Arsenal.
Yeah. But Arsenal too. Yeah, exactly.
But I think that, Champions League final should be more interesting because there will be an American winner. It'll be the second American winner. I found out a couple weeks ago that someone had actually won it. Obviously, it wasn't like a huge feature in the team, but a Dortmund player, 96, won it, who was a U.S. international. So it's good to see Americans abroad. Obviously, we'll see if Zach Steffen is not going to play. It's just not going to happen because he's their second choice keeper, and he's not going to, unless Ederson like gets COVID again. That's the only chance that he has. But Pulisic is going to play. It's just a matter of whether he starts or comes off the bench. So I think that as a American soccer fan, I have to say soccer because Americans do call it soccer, but if it's not the American team, should feel good about the fact that it seems like the game is growing. There are more dual nationals as well as, American born and bred players that are going to Europe, actually playing meaningful games. So
the state of Pennsylvania should have a ton of pride because they're both from Pennsylvania. So
that is, that's true.
Who knew? Zach Steffen's from Pennsylvania, and then Pulisic is from Hershey, Pennsylvania. So who knew?
I guess it's a hotbed, and it's not literally a hotbed because it's actually quite cold in the summer, in the winters. But and you see a lot of these dual national guys too, with Musa just committing over England, and you got Serginho, the bread boy himself, who says he will only eats bread before the games. He's got to carb up, which is one of the funnier clips that I've seen. But it's good to see, 2026, it's coming home. It's coming home.
I think people also, I think also people shit on like U.S. national team and like they don't really fully understand the infrastructure, and that there are a lot of really talented U.S. players. I think it's just a misunderstanding, and like there's these analogies of like football's not popular in the U.S. or American soccer is just flawed and outdated and just not true anymore. And these types of things enhance that argument for the right side, the actual side, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think that also it doesn't help that U.S. soccer has been pretty corrupt for a pretty extended period of time.
I mean,
now
if we're talking about corruption in soccer, that's not just US. Like,
oh, for sure. The FIFA and UEFA and everybody's very corrupt, but I think especially the US, the system there, not especially, because that's just a lie. The FIFA corruption was like prosecuted in court. Like, I don't think that it's ever gotten to that extent here, but the grassroots stuff has been kind of disgusting in terms of the pay to play stuff. But
yeah,
that's just kind of like American sporting culture. Like, if you're good enough, you're just gonna have to pay to be on a good team, or else, have fun playing for your school and hoping that you'll get the exposure. As someone who played like on travel ball teams, like, it was just a whole bunch of bullshit. Like, I wasn't that good, but my parents put me on these teams because I could pay for the uniform, and I played above my weight. But there were definitely like 15 other kids who were significantly better than I was, and maybe just couldn't, were in the area. So, American sporting culture.
And that's a consequence of closed leagues, I would say, as well, right? Because if you think the grassroots, there's no way they can advance. And if they can't advance, they can't get more revenue coming into the team. They can't get more revenue coming into the team. There's no way that they're going to have any incentive to enhance opportunities for players that can't afford to play. And then it actually affects all your national teams, and it affects all the aspects. So, open system for the win.
Yeah. I mean,
and just the academy system there too is so much better.
Yeah.
It's like you could be a child and not be professional, but, be with a team and work your way up through that system, or even just switch academies. But in the US, it's kind of separate.
But, athletes get a college education. Isn't that supposed to be the be all and savior?
Yeah. No. The answer is
we'll do NCAA next podcast.
Yeah, no, that'll
be a whole.
I would know, but it should be soon. The legislation that will prevent it. But speaking of college, there's now, I think it was just recently like a Georgetown defender who just signed with, or a midfielder who just signed with Crystal Palace, like out of the US college system, which is pretty cool to see. Obviously, it's like a 1-year deal. I'm sure it's not like he's going to be in the first team, but I think that it's just proving that maybe, just maybe, the US sporting model isn't horrible for those who can like be inside of it. But again, the fact that you
as horrible as we thought.
Yeah,
still
the buy-in terrible. Is just a simple cost of college tuition, which is just a mere mortgage on a house. But
I think it all depends which rabbi you ask.
Yeah. Exactly. Father Rosenstein probably has some nice thoughts on that. But just before we wrap, Brandon had a quick betting suggestion for those who are in the legal municipalities.
Yeah.
Betting.
I mean, this is all just theoretical.
Before you start, to my employers listening to this, I have nothing to do with this segment.
This is purely theoretical. Although
purely
Brandon, of age,
not about Arik.
I'm in California right now. I mean, Arik, I'm not sure about the legalities where you are right now.
It's a lot. But do you think it's right, Brandon? Do you think betting on sports is right, or is that for next?
I mean, podcast? we can say that. We can say that for a later date. We can have that discussion.
Short answer is no comment.
No comment. Yeah. Is it right? Maybe not. Is it fun? Yes. Okay.
It's only wrong if you lose a lot of money.
Exactly.
Yeah. Is it addicting? To be determined.
Oh, very. Oh, what? But just keeping it to soccer, I'm actually going to make my lock for Major League Soccer. So I just recommend taking the Los Angeles Galaxy at plus 100, who are playing at home against the San Jose Earthquakes. So the LA Galaxy are 4-2 in their last 6 games, and they've won every single game that they've played at home this season. Javier Hernandez, better known as Chicharito, he's been amazing so far. After struggling last year, he's leading the entire league in goals scored with 7 in 6 games that he's started this season. And San Jose, on the other hand, is on a 3-game losing streak, and they've just been struggling to score, averaging just 1 goal per match. So recommend if you want to, you can also take the under on this, but I'm not sure about that one because the last 10 times the Galaxy and Earthquakes have played, the over has hit 8 times out of 10. So,
well, I mean, if I were to hypothetically put any money down, I would be confident in that because of all the incredible numbers presented by our resident betting burst.
I have to
to
back it up with some data.
If I were to hypothetically invest all my savings, I would bet on this, of course. Hypothetically, right?
Yeah. If I were to put all my Dogecoin into one game,
and when I'm hypothetically wrong, don't blame me.
Yeah.
I'll sue you for the amount that I lost.
You don't know what's gonna happen until it happens.
Yeah, very true. Very true. Well, I think that just about does it. Arik, is there anything that you'd like to plug at the end?
Yeah.
Make sure people know.
Just gotta thank my sponsors. No, I'm kidding.
Hey, I mean, if you got them, bro.
Yeah, exactly. Just the only thing I'd like to plug other than Passion FC, which is at Passion FC on Instagram, is I encourage you all to look at NISA, which is a promotion relegation league happening in the U.S. It's the equivalent of the third division certified by U.S. Soccer. And get involved in your local communities and your local teams because they're there. And that's the only way to really change the culture is by standing up and being counted. So other than that, I thank you guys for having me on. Can't wait to be back for the 1 millionth episode.
Yes, sir.
Here first, okay?
Yeah.
1 millionth episode special. We'll have literally everyone we've ever had on the pod at once. Everyone will speak at the same time, and it will just be incoherent nonsense.
No one's allowed to mute their mic. That's
exactly.
That's the catch.
You need to get the Zoom Premium though.
I would have to.
It's actually really expensive though.
$15 a month.
Looking into that early.
Very true.
Thank you, NYU, for not allowing us to record our meetings as a parting gift. Thank you.
Yeah.
But we thank you all for tuning in. Episode 5 will be on Sunday. Andrew will be back. Guest to be determined. But Arik, thanks so much for being here. We appreciate you.
Really appreciate it.
Whenever you're back in New York, we'll ball out, brother. I will hope that. Hey, we're legal now. We can say that.
That's right.
Hope to see you soon. And thanks for listening. Back on Sunday.